Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. Ooh, our mics are loud tonight. It is Wednesday, February 26, 2020, and we are at the Freeport High School. Candy DeSipkis is out of town this evening, so she won't be joining us, and hopefully Liam will be and is just running a couple minutes behind, but we'll get started in the meantime. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so I would take a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the February 12th, 2020 meeting as presented, barring any errors or omissions. Valerie, thank you. Beth, second. All those in favor? Great, none opposed. Adjustments to the agenda?
We have none.
None. Good news and recognition. Well, if Liam joins us, we'll have him hop in with the student rep report. Oh, yes. Oh, do you have something to share in his stead?
I just thought I'd let everyone know that the main drama festival play that the Freeport Drama Club is bringing this year is called Darklight, and the Freeport performances are Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. and do be advised that it is about mental wellness, including themes around suicide, and I think it's a very positive play, but there may be some triggers, so be thoughtful about who you bring with you, and please come support the kids.
At the FPAC.
At the FPAC.
What time?
7 p.m. on Friday and Saturday.
Great, thank you. So that's the one act, the student written one act. Okay.
Not student written this year.
Oh.
No students submitted anything this year, so hopefully next year they'll return to that long-standing tradition.
Okay. All right, so next on our agenda is public comment. So if we have anybody who wants to share anything with the board, we ask that you come up to the microphone. Just let us know what your name is, where you live, and keep comments to 3 minutes or less, please.
Hi there. My name's Delbert Aris. I've been a resident of Freeport for 60 years. I didn't want to do this, but I got to do this because nothing's gotten done. It's about your athletic program. I had an incident where my grandson, who's 11 years old, was at an ice cream social a month ago, just before the basketball playoffs. And one of the so-called great basketball players on the varsity team had made a comment to him out in the line. I don't think I really should tell you what he said, but you got to remember the kid's 11 years old, and he made the comment about his mother, okay? And it was very nasty, and I believe it's something that's going to stay with him for years. Now, you got 3 people in your program, your athletic program, that knew about this, okay? And then you got a father that knew about this. And not one person did anything about it. So I'm here to let you know that there's a problem with your athletic program. There's a problem with the leadership. You guys say that you have code of ethic books that these kids go by. You have missions that we work with for these students. And this has gotten very nasty towards my grandson. So I suggest, I'm going to keep it clean, I suggest that you guys sit down and have a chat with Craig Sickles, who is the athletic director, okay, who is in charge of the programs and who failed to do anything about this, okay? That's it.
Cynthia, could you maybe get some information on the complaint policy on how we can? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, any other public comment? All right. Report from the superintendent.
So our first superintendent question answer period for this year will begin tomorrow at Pownell Elementary School from 9 to 10 in the morning for mugs and muffins. And we encourage any community member or parent to come and discuss any educational topic, including our budget, that might be on your mind. We also will have lots of other opportunities for input on the budget in the upcoming months, with the first one being on March 18th here at Freeport High School before the board meeting. On our sports update, we have some great news. Our Nordic ski team placed first in the state for Class B. Way to go, skiers. And Friday, the students and staff will hold their traditional hall walk that they do for all of our state champions at Freeport High School, where the skiers will be celebrated for their accomplishment. And we also, our boys hockey team is still in the playoffs, and they're going to be playing Friday night at 5 o'clock in the quarterfinals in Lewiston at the Colisee against Thornton Academy. And we're currently in 4th place, so we're really hopeful that we'll continue on. And then our unified basketball team is also still going. We have 2 more home games. One's on Monday, March 2nd at Freeport Middle School at 3:30. And then again at the high school at 3:30 on Friday, March 6th, where we'll be playing against Yarmouth. And Maddie's already reported on the one-act play, but I will say that this is really their final rehearsal before they are taking it to the district festival that will occur the following Friday and Saturday, where they'll be competing against other one-act plays from the other high schools. And then over the break, I was able to go to the legislature to hear discussion from the Education Committee on LD 2016 about not allowing for the use of suspension or withholding of recess for students in 5th grade or under. And unfortunately, the discussion was tabled and has not been rescheduled yet, but I did learn where to go. This was the first time I'd try to attend one of those. And they did discuss increasing what the state pays for the retirees' health insurance. And so the Education Committee did support that bill, and that will be going forward for more debate to the Senate. And then in other legislative news, LD 1879, originally titled An Act Regarding the Adoption of Education Policies, has been changed to an act regarding negotiations by public employers of teachers. And this will now, they've gone through quite a few iterations of that bill, and this will now leave teacher planning and prep time and teacher transfers in the bill as permissive subjects of negotiation. And so it's important to note that items that are included as permissive subjects are not mandatory subjects of bargaining. So if one of the sides decides they don't want to negotiate a permissive subject, then it's not negotiated. And then the bill on involuntary transfers has been withdrawn, so that's no longer going forward. I also want to report the recent resignations of Holly Barnum, Human Resource Coordinator, and Chris Norton, Custodian Bus Driver at Moore Street School. And then to end on I think, a really exciting note, today at Freeport High School, Senior Emma Tiemann was sworn into the United States Army in a very unique way. Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Morgan was up in the space station and led the swearing-in ceremony from the International Space Station, 250 miles above the Earth, going 17,000 miles per hour. And there were about 1,000 recruits across the nation that took place in the ceremony. This involved 110 different schools from across the United States, and Freeport High School was part of this. And it's the first time that it's ever been done. So she was the first in the state of Maine to have a part of this, and they were able to take some questions. And the Lieutenant Morgan talked about the importance of STEM education and having a well-rounded background. She is not somebody that wants to have the spotlight on her, so she only allowed about 10 of our students and 10 of our teachers to participate, but Channel 13 was there today, and I think it's probably being broadcast right now. I know, but you know, it's different because you don't have to watch TV, right, when you have people around. And then maybe it's going to be on Fox 23 tonight at 10 o'clock. But that concludes my report. And I just think that's super exciting.
That is fantastic news. What an unusual thing to happen. All right, so we'll have to be out of here and home for 10, so we can all check the news.
That's what I'm thinking. I'll go for that.
We'll work on it. Okay, so 9 on our agenda, administrative reports. We only have one this evening, finance and Grover.
Hello. So, just to review the general budget report that you should have in your packets. Our year-to-date expenditures are $16,514,478, with encumbrances of $1,593,206. So our total remaining balance is $15,972,610. That's or the remaining percentage is 46.87, and that compares to this time last year when it was 47.18%. So very close. We have a little less remaining than last year, but then if you look back another year, we have a little more than we had remaining. So it's pretty much right on target, I think. Any questions?
Questions for Anne? All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, board comments and committee reports. So board information exchange, agenda requests, any subcommittees that have met that people want to report out on. Now would be a great time, Valley.
Two things. One, the Wellness Committee was looking at the policy that we approved last year, and the group picked up on the fact that there is nothing on that policy that refers to mental health. So we began doing a little research on policies for mental health, but I wanted to bring it up to the policy committee as something to keep on your radar screen, that we may be reaching out to you for help. I did some research on some of the things that we can share, but I wanted to bring that up. And the other thing, since we're talking about just issues that have to do with health, I wanted to know if we have a policy for how we treat infectious diseases, and what are the triggers that, say, for example, result in a school closure. And given the coronavirus and everything that's going on around, and the news from the CDC, I wanted to just put out the question just to make sure that we're prepared. Not saying that I'm ringing an alarm or anything like that, but better safe than sorry. We want to know, I think it's good for the public to know how we treat situations like that. So if there's anything to report back on in a future meeting, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mara.
I have a Region 10 update. We had a meeting on Monday. So we were surprised to learn that Superintendent Director Nancy Weed was submitting her resignation to retire under plan to enter into a plan to retire and rehire. So the board unanimously voted to take her position basically and enter into a new arrangement to have a new superintendent director and keep her on a part-time basis in order to have an easy transition. And the intention was to enter into negotiations with the current Brunswick superintendent who is leaving. So apparently he is a big champion of Region 10 and has been really involved. In the past was the superintendent director on a rotating basis for several years. So the board was excited about the plan for moving forward and thinks it's going to, maintain continuity at Region 10. So, and then the other thing I wanted to share with you is that we got to see the budget for the first time. And I think Dr. Foley had said at our last budget meeting that Region 10 was indicating a 2.3% increase. And for Freeport, that is a very small amount. It's $2,289. So there are a few things that are still up in the air around increases in health insurance and dental insurance, so those aren't final yet. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you is Director Weed suggested suspending the math program due to low participation in future years. There are only 7 students participating. We did hear some concerns from teachers about the ability of students to have those foundational math skills with that program being suspended, but there's just such low student participation. It looks like it may not continue. And then the suggestion that Director Weed made was that we add a English social studies component and a Foundations of Technology, which is an exploratory program where kids can participate in 3 to 4 programs at a time and sort of see what they like. And the intention for that would be for it to be a 9th and 10th grade program. So the board is still considering all of those things. If you have anything you want to share with me for me to take back to Region 10, please let me know. Thank you.
Riley.
Is this a good time to ask a question related to that?
Sure.
Yeah. So the students who go to Region 10 are still taking math in their home schools, right? So it's not that they're not taking math.
Yes, that was my question actually. And there's also a plan to add additional instructional support, a new full FTE for an instructional strategist that would provide support to as well if students needed support in math. But yes, they would still be taking math at their sending schools, potentially.
That would be an interesting position to be an instructional strategist for math when there's no math classes. Like, how do you know who needs the help? What are you basing it off of if they're not involved in their like homeschool math programs?
Yeah, I have some concerns about it too, and I'm wondering if this next year, in like a transition year when this instructional person comes on, since it's a new position, seeing sort of what they do and what the demands are of that position, and whether without the math program at Region 10, it is still all okay and the students have enough support. So I think that's something to keep an eye on in that transition.
So I haven't heard about that particular position, but I'm thinking it may not be specific to math, the instructional strategist, right?
That's right, it's not.
And it could be supporting the teachers as much as the students, or is it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good point. So if the teacher needed to provide additional support to the student, the instructional strategist, my impression is, would be supporting the teacher.
And we also have lab support for math here at Freeport High School. So any of our students that are going there, if they're struggling with the math, they still could be supported here. Not only with their math class, but with the math lab.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know how many of our students are in the math program. Like I said, there's only 7 right now, so
Right.
it's, yeah.
Does I know one of the issues for the kids going to Region 10 is it sort of cuts their day into 2 chunks, and obviously they have travel that other kids don't. Does the timing of that impact their ability to access those labs?
So if you remember when Principal Gulco did her budget, she talked about we're adding a whole math position, and that's so that we can have the math lab offered throughout the day. I think currently this year it's maybe just, I don't know how many sections, but I know it's not every section.
So this would provide access, regardless if you went in the
That's
morning or the afternoon to Region 10.
Right.
Good, okay. All right, thank you for that update, Maura. Any other requests, agenda, comments? No? Okay, so we'll jump to 10B, Finance Committee. Kate.
All right, Finance Committee has been working on a few things. We obviously cost sharing, but other than that, we completed the audit, and there is a fund balance in the high school renovation project. And so prior to deciding that we would spend that money, we had, just because of the transition and stuff with the new finance director, we had Ann and Becky just double check and make sure that we were positive that that balance was accurate, and Becky's working on developing a list with some of the administrators on how we might be able to spend that money. It has to be spent on the high school because it's in that designated fund that we actually borrowed the money for. So it has to be spent here on like capital item type things. So that's what we've been looking at. And then there's also been just going back through historical documentation and tracking capital reserve funds like the tennis courts. You'll recall we have set up a capital reserve fund for that, and the first time this year is where you'll see that in the budget documents.
Track and field, not tennis. We
Did I
haven't
say
set up-
tennis courts?
Yeah.
Sorry. That we are going to be setting that up in this budget. 2 budgets ago, we set up, I think it was like $35,000 for the track and field capital reserve fund, and we haven't yet had to see that in our budget documents in the summary form for the capital reserve funds, because you have to wait for the full year to go by and for you to do your audit and know the money's there and then designate it. So that'll be in this budget packet here. And then of course we've got the tennis courts that we're going to be establishing too. So that's basically all we've been working on. And the other thing was we tonight talked about the email that Maddie had sent about reaching out to outside for outside assistance with the cost sharing formula materials, and just wanted to get a feel from the board if they would support us doing that, if there's general consensus that we should do that, we'll move forward with that rather than working further on getting something back to you immediately on the 4th cost sharing proposal.
So there have been, between Becky and Anne, a couple of folks have been raised as potential resources that we might reach out to. We haven't heard back from any of them as of yet about interest or capacity, but we do have a couple of folks in mind if the board feels like that would be a beneficial route for us to take.
Sorry, I'm a little lost. I don't think I read the email. What are we talking about?
So Maddie had sent out an email. Do you want to summarize?
I think I could summarize. I sent an email after our last meeting, I think it might have been the next day, wondering if noticing that it's such a heavy lift for the finance committee, right? But I think I should say it. I kind of wanted to say it anyway, just for our multitudes of viewers. Who knows? Well, I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and I do want to make sure that we do our due diligence, and we have asked them to go back a couple times, it's clear that you guys are working the spreadsheets quite a bit, and so that's one reason why I was concerned, is because of the heavy lift. But it also occurred to me that it might be better for us as a board to review documentation that is prepared, through the guidance of the finance committee and the guidance of the board by somebody who's also independent. It might allow for greater transparency. It seemed like that might be a smarter way for us to work. Yeah, I think that's all that I wrote.
So I do remember the email. I did read it. I think it's a good idea.
I have 2 questions. One, Kate, what's the balance of that account that you were talking about that's left over for the track and field?
It's about $162,000.
It's not the track.
It's the
high school renovation.
Oh, I'm
not
sorry.
not
So
the
the track and field keeps coming up in bad situations. Okay, thank you, Kate. And as to Maddie's suggestion, and then you had mentioned you reached out to a couple of people. So are you talking about like what kind of people? I guess is a question.
smart. Number of people. Yes. Just people that have been involved with educational finance in the past, whether they're currently serving there, whether they are previously and maybe consulting. So just other people that who would clearly not have the learning curve that we had to get, 2 years to get to where we are today. People that could get up to speed quicker than we did. I mean, our thoughts as the finance committee this evening were not to, scratch everything we've done, but really bring them in, lay out the templates and sort of show them where we came up with the information, do some, just background checking to make sure we haven't conceptually mixed anything up, and then get some feedback. If they've got a great idea, we'd love to hear it. So I think that was kind of, I think the positives of doing this is I think it, might build some credibility with both the board and the community, having some external, unbiased, uninterested parties involved. And I mean, the downside is it's time and it's money, right? Because most smart people don't work for free. That's why they're smart. You don't.
I remember a while back when we first started talking about this, it was someone from legal, a lawyer,
Drummond Woodsum,
who came in and I thought gave a really clear picture of like how the current one worked, and then had a couple other sort of options that he explained, and then it ended up how they were all very similar even though they came from different directions. So I don't know if that's somebody that would be a good person, because I just remember it was a really good presentation, and it was obviously, it was by him, it was unbiased in terms of like, he didn't have any skin in the game type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. That's the person who does, one of the attorneys at Drummond Woodsum that represents the board and does a lot of the financial law pieces of it. I think our thoughts, and nothing obviously is confirmed or set in stone because we haven't heard back from anybody, would be to really get someone who is a school or was a school finance person. And, not necessarily, I mean, no offense to Bill, I think he did a great presentation. But I think the idea would be to have a finance person as opposed to an attorney. But
I think it seems like a good idea too. I mean, why not? I mean, of course, the money piece, but
yeah. Anybody strongly opposed to us seeking out?
Opposed, but I just
Jeremy,
Maddie, when I first saw the idea, it's like, there can't be an RSU 5 finance expert that's just going to swoop in and say, aha, here's exactly what you need to do. Because, every situation is so unique, and we're, extremely unique within the RSUs as we've studied every possible other plan that's out there for the RSUs. But at the same time, getting another perspective and seeing, is there something we're missing, or is there go air quotes, standard way that this could be looked at that's different than the Bill Stockmeyer way? Because in a lot of ways, in my mind, the tables and stuff that he originally produced were a decent basis for what was created out of this. So yeah, maybe a slightly different perspective couldn't hurt. But like Michelle said, it definitely will take some time. It won't be you'll be back here in 2 weeks with a final recommendation type thing. So.
Yeah, and I also just thought, as financially savvy as the committee is, it seemed like it was beyond the scope of the committee's work. I mean, there's so much work. I know, for policy, for example, if we have a question, Cynthia brings in people from the district who are experts in whatever we're discussing, or she reaches out to the Department of Education for advice. So it just seems like it would be, I think it'd be really good for our relationships with the towns and with the taxpayers. And I'm reluctant to slow us down, but I do want to make sure we really do this well.
Yeah, I agree with all of those things. I think since we're rolling into the budget season now, we have had that sort of do we, don't we with the July 1 budget. If we were to be able to move forward with a approved cost sharing formula in March, once the budget maybe has already even been adopted, is that fair to then layer on a different, cost sharing formula than what we had originally thought when the budget was prepared. Maybe not, probably not. So, that eliminates a little bit of the time pressure to get it in place ASAP. So, yeah.
So I have a question about the nature of the work that we will be handing to this person. Will we say, here are numbers, what do you think, come back with ideas? Or will we say, will the board give this person a little more direction so that this person doesn't go off in a million different directions, cost a ton of money and a lot of time? I mean, I think that the direction still needs to come from the board. So we need to, no matter who does the work, we need to decide ourselves what is fair and then charge that person with actually crunching the numbers and bringing back a proposal, but not necessarily just come with suggestions out of thin air.
I don't know. I go back and forth on that because I feel like part of having an unbiased, not uninterested, but you know what I mean? No financial interest is that, they may come back with what we may not, have come up with as what individually we think is fair. But, part of why we want to bring them in is to say, what, as an expert, and I think we would probably provide them with all of our background conversations. We would provide them with the discussions we've had as a board. We would certainly bring forward to them our discussions. I mean, we could even give them the link to the videos of our discussions on fairness and those sort of things. But I mean, I wouldn't want to hamstring them, if you will, with these are the parameters, build us a plan that works within those, because, that's basically what we've been doing. So I think having a little bit of leeway from them to provide some insight is actually what we need. But
yeah, that's a good point. Understanding that it will take a lot longer and it will.
Well, we're not going to make them say, start from scratch. We'll give them all of our base information. We'll, and like I said, their learning curve is going to be way quicker than ours. Okay, so I'm getting the consensus that we move forward with that, and I think if we learned anything from the past year is that we'll be checking in with you guys on sort of interim progress updates. As we have things to share, we'll be sure to do that. All right. On to policy. None. Okay, budget review. So Becky's going to start us off with a tan sheet.
When we're not redoing the whole packet, we're using less beautiful colors. Did she give me one?
Did you what?
Okay, so in the packet that Anne just handed out, if you would turn to page 7 and 8, those are the pages that we have revised with the new look than what you've previously seen in our packets this year and in previous years. And of course, Anne and I think that it's more understandable, but we're also open for your feedback. So you can see there that it clearly shows that we have $500,000 in the capital reserve fund. We have $100,000 in the fuel reserve fund, and then on page 8 are the 2 new reserve fund accounts that we've set up and that we're anticipating in our track and field having $105,000 by June 30th, 2021. And then in the tennis court reserve fund, we're just setting that up for the first year, and so we're hoping to start with $30,000 there. And then we are still trying to revise the budget impact summary page, and I think that the finance committee weighed in on that tonight after I left. And so we're hoping to have that updated, or I don't know, if we decided to stay with the current one, then we'll have that at the next board meeting, but I'll back up for the reserve account questions.
Page 8, I just think you meant to have it under tennis reserve fund. It still says track and field.
Oh, yes, okay. Good catch.
We cannot get these two straight today.
Yeah, I know it. That is what we meant. Okay, and you have that? Okay. Okay. Any other questions or catches?
No, but this is great.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay,
very good.
great. So we will have that budget impact by the next board meeting with the new look. In good news around the budget, Ann noticed that the debt service amount in the ED 279 did not align with our amortization, I can't say that word anyway, schedule. She contacted the state and discovered the main bond bank has refinanced, which reduced the interest rate, and so this results in a savings of $113,294, which now
We refinanced our debt without even telling us for a lower rate.
that's what we, isn't that great? Yeah. So that now decreases our expenditure increase to 3.47%, with the tax impact remaining at 4.77%. So in not as good news, or I guess I'll call this a mixed news. That's beautiful. In not as beautiful news, our enrollment numbers in kindergarten at Moore Street have just really exceeded any previous numbers that we've seen. And so when I presented the budget on January 22nd, we felt like super confident in those numbers and, without adding an additional class. But we're currently at 98, which puts us at class sizes of 19 and 20, which we feel fine about. But based on previous years, what we're not feeling so good about is that we think we may get more students enrolling before September. So this is going to either result in a need of an additional ed tech at the least, or the creation of another kindergarten classroom. If we decide to recommend an ed tech, this will result in an expenditure increase now of 3.58% with a tax impact of 4.90. If we end up recommending a teacher, this will be a tax impact of 3.72%. An expenditure increase with a tax impact of 5.08. Julie and I have been in discussions about this, and by the next board meeting, we hope to have a firm recommendation to the board. Yes, Maddie?
Will we need another classroom?
Well, if we add if we add a teacher, we're going to need a classroom.
So, but like a portable classroom?
So we've had a lot of discussion about that today. I don't know, was that 2 hours, Julie? I think it might have been. And so we do not feel like that's the best option if we go with the teacher. So we feel like the best option, and Julie can weigh in on more about this when she presents, but we're really feeling like the best option would be to put STEM on a cart 1 day a week, because what we figured out today was we do have a room where it could be shared with another specialist, and so they could share that classroom, not meaning two people instructing at the same time. But while that teacher is at Pownell, then the STEM classroom would be taking place at Morris Street. But on the 1 day, there would have to be an overlap, and so Julie has not had time to figure this out, but she would, with the help of the STEM teacher, they would have to determine, which classes would have STEM probably in their classroom. Yes.
and I'm sure you're already all over this, but I just keep thinking we're going to have to renegotiate our plans around that school and
Yeah.
its capacity, because the trend line, it continues to go up and up and up, and we're talking about building additional housing in this town, and the community's growing.
You know, what's interesting is that when I did my budget presentation, it's really our pre-K to 5 that enrollment is flat, but not in kindergarten at Moore Street. but the way that it's kind of trickled out, you know, our biggest increase right now is really at the high school. But and so, you know, they've increased by almost 100 students, and we've added 2 pre-K classrooms. And when you know, take out those 32 students, we're on the decline, but not in kindergarten. So we are looking at that, and we are still, Dennis has been discussing with the town areas that we could put a portable if we wanted to go that route. So I think that he met with Julie over the last couple of days, and they looked at that, and you know, there are 3 options. So there is an option for a portable. We just don't feel like right now that's the best way to go. But, you know, we definitely have a space if we decide we want to bring in a portable. And as you know, I think it's in April that Dennis is going to do a workshop on what we're looking at for facilities and square footage.
Sorry, Peggy, could you repeat the number? We're currently at 96, did you say?
No, I think, did I say 90? No, I think I said, I thought 98.
98.
Yep.
Okay. And we're still pretty high in 2nd grade, so.
Right, we haven't seen any movement there, and normally you don't see a lot. I mean, so now pre-K is the big unpredictable grade, right? So it's the 1st grade that's always the hardest to predict. And because pre-K is not required, it still makes predicting kindergarten very difficult throughout the district.
Though I do recall the year when Mass Landing got like 45 new students during the summer, so
Yeah.
it can happen
Quickly.
at any grade level, yeah.
Yes, and I think that's what Julie's seeing with kindergarten right now.
Hopefully, part of what we're seeing is that this early is that you guys are doing a great job getting to parents earlier, so they're not like in August going, oh, I got to start my kid in a month, and then they're out, you know, registering them. Hopefully, all of the outreach you guys are doing is reaching people sooner, so that we can make better decisions, having better information sooner. So.
Well, and I think the increase in our pre-K, right? So we have more students and parents who are aware, and they're just, you know,
Moving on.
planning on moving on. But we have we currently, I think, have 62 pre-K students, and so we've had that many more parents enrolled for kindergarten already. And I think I did report at our last board meeting or in a board update, that Durham now, we will not be able to offer universal pre-K out there, because we have space for 32, and we're currently at 44. So we are having more kids
And so they'll do.
in Durham too.
So they'll do a lottery, right?
Yeah.
Is what they've historically done. If you get in by a certain date, right, they do a lottery, and then the ones that aren't successful in the lottery, if there's spots in Pownell, would they have access to those? I mean, obviously,
Yes.
it's not going to be spots in Moore Street, but
But Lisa's currently full, I think.
oh, is she?
So that's our expansion there.
Interesting.
These little people.
All right, was that it for you?
I think. Yes, that's it.
Okay, so we will start off the department updates with instructional support. Bonnie Violet.
So good evening to all of you. I'm Bonnie Violet, Director of Instructional Support. All right. I guess this is working, right? Okay. So you should have a little handout of the requests that I put forward. The first one is to request a half-time social worker for Freeport High School. Right now, there is a full-time social worker, and she provides half of her time is to provide services to students with disabilities, and the other half of her time is to provide services to non-identified students. And based on the numbers this year, factoring in the students that are going to be graduating, as well as the 8th graders coming into Freeport High School next year, the numbers as well as the level of need of our students really looks like we're going to need a full-time special ed social worker. So this request, because we already have a half-time position in the budget, is to request a half-time position for special ed to make that a full-time position, and then that would leave the half-time position for the social worker to provide services to non-identified students. So that's the first request. Any questions about that?
Wow. Okay. We'll start on this side. Donna.
Just a clarification question, whether that is that related to the special ed social worker that was requested by the high school?
I think it's the same.
Is it the same? Okay,
Yeah.
That's what.
They both talked about it, but it's one position.
Okay, that's
it
what I wanted to
technically
make sure
falls
that
under.
was the same person.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
What's a non-identified?
A student that's not identified with a disability.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that an insurance, like a billable service? That, do you know what I mean? In terms of, like, are we paying for like the social worker's salary?
Yes, we are.
I'm guessing, can't licensed social workers bill? And do some of these students have either private insurance or main care?
So some of our students do have main care. Some have insurance, some don't. We have not billed for LCSWs other than the LCSWs that are really overseeing the ed techs that are behavioral support specialists. So that's certainly something that we could look into, but up to this point, we haven't billed for LCSWs. And, you know, I guess one of the areas we'd have to look at if we explored this is how many students are covered by main care, because there is like a documentation protocol that's required. And so if we don't have a large number of students on main care, it may not be worth the time for our social worker to do the documentation required.
Right. I just know that with the expansion,
Yep.
you know, in my day job, you know, it's main care is available now to a larger group of people.
That's
and
true.
So I'm just wondering, just, you know,
Yeah.
just a thought, because it seems, you know, like if obviously, like you said, if the paperwork and the number of students does not, you know, jive
Justify it, yeah.
in terms of that. But I just thought with the Medicaid expansion, like that's something that, you know, I know that is kind of becoming a little bit more accessible to people.
That's true. Yeah. And we could certainly explore that. Absolutely.
So would billing parents require parental notification? Because that was the discussion that we had with Jen Galco.
It would require parent consent to access main care.
Right.
I don't think we could bill insurance companies. I mean, that's a whole other, protocol.
Right.
That's pretty cumbersome. I think the best we could do as a district is to look into main care. But again, we would need parent consent. And whether we get it or not is, again, up to parents.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything that jeopardizes privacy for the students.
Yes.
So that's a primary concern of mine. I'd rather pay for it out of the budget than jeopardize the chances that the students who need the services will access them. Another question I had was,
Can I?
yes.
Becky.
So I want to clarify what I think is some confusion, Bonnie.
Oh.
Our students with disabilities that are getting social work services, that's all written into the IEP.
Yes.
There's nothing confidential about that. What Principal Gulko was talking about was the drug alcohol, right? And so it's different.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking of the half person who will be doing social work for non-identified students who don't have plans and who now can just walk into Margaret's office and talk about whatever they want to talk. If we are thinking about billing private insurance or Medicare,
I don't think we would be. I don't think
Okay.
we'd be billing for those students
Okay.
because it's pretty strict when you want to bill, and
Okay.
so we would need somebody like Bonnie overseeing that and doing the training of how to bill correctly and everything.
Okay. And the other question was, do you know what percentage of the full-time social worker that we currently have handling both identified and non-identified students actually belong in the SPED line or in the general line?
You mean like currently?
Currently, yes.
So right now she's servicing, on any given day between 28 and 30 students that are identified. So it really doesn't leave a lot of time, I'll be honest. It doesn't leave a lot of time for her to serve other students because, that's pretty close to a full caseload.
Right. So you're saying also that your request for the special ed portion of the budget will benefit students who are not identified because then they will have a full half social
Yes.
worker handling their cases.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I might be confused, quite likely. Just the billing thing. I was looking, I know in the past we had really never billed for anything, and then we had a few years ago started billing for some stuff, and then in the shared revenue this year we have state agency Medicaid, which I think is some billing of some sort, but that's significantly less than the 90,000 we had last year. So I'm wondering, are these the same billings, or is this a different animal altogether?
You mean for the licensed clinical social workers?
I don't know. We just have in our revenues, we have state agency Medicaid at 50,000, and last year it was 90,000.
Yep. So what happened there is, like 4 or 5 years ago, we started billing for behavioral health professionals because we had students that had, pretty significant needs in terms of their behaviors. In order to qualify, in order for students to qualify for the district to get reimbursement from Maine Care, they need to meet the criteria based on an assessment, and they have to have Maine Care coverage. Our students are doing very well right now. Many of them don't qualify for getting that level of BHP support. They did 4 years ago, but if you look at the same population of students, they've really made a lot of progress, and they don't not as many qualify for that service. So that's kind of a testament to
I say that's
the
a good
work.
reason to have the revenues going down. Okay.
Well, it is, but the downside is, we're not getting as much Maine Care money, but the positive is our students are doing much better than they were.
And presumably they're requiring less services as a
Exactly.
result, right?
Yeah.
Offset. Okay. Sorry, we all jumped right in the middle of your presentation. Carry
That's
on.
okay, because it's, I'll just do this one position at a time. Okay. Any questions about social work? No, okay. So the other position is we have an ELL teacher in the district who is full-time, and I'm proposing to reduce it to half-time. And the reason for that is when we look at the number and the level of need of the EL learners that we have.
And ELL stands for?
English language learners. It's hard to justify having a full-time position. And so when we look at the numbers, when I looked at that, we have 13 students who qualify for direct services, and this is based on access testing that every EL learner is required to take every year. Of the 13, 5 have IEPs, which means they have disabilities. And of the 5, one of them is also getting EL services. Of the 13, one parent declined, so that student's not getting EL services. So we're going to have, next year, we're going to have 8 students getting direct services. Now which means that 11 are going to be on monitor or consult, which means the district has a responsibility through the ELL teacher to just check in on how those students are doing. So every year, just like in special ed, students have a meeting where teachers are a part of the meeting, the EL teacher is there, and the parent is part of that. And they put together a plan for each of the EL students that basically specifies the services they're going to receive, the amount of service. And again, the plan is based on student need, meaning the level of English proficiency they have, as well as the appropriateness of either being removed from the classroom to get EL services, or push in, or like for some of our youngest learners, pre-K and K, they're in the classroom most of the time, just as they are with their peers, learning the language just like their peers are. So it's more appropriate to keep them in the classroom than to provide a direct service or pull out or push in. So when I compared this to some of our other districts like Westbrook and Portland, their caseloads are like 35 students to 1 teacher, and the caseload here will be, probably half of that. So I'm looking at having a half-time position for the ELL teacher next year. Any questions about that? Okay. So moving on, the other request is to decrease one of the ed techs at the high school. And the reason for that, and this keeps kind of like falling. I'm trying to hold it.
Our drama mom can fix the mic for you.
That's what I was thinking.
That's okay, I can keep holding it. I'll wing it. I've done okay so far.
Just leave it and just don't touch it.
Okay, I won't touch it.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So anyways, so I'm looking at decreasing one of the ed techs at the high school. At the beginning of this school year, based on the number of students that we had going from 8th grade to 9th grade that needed a more specialized type of program, we actually created 2 what we call choices classrooms at the high school. And so we hired an ed tech to provide support for our students that are getting academic support, because what we did is we pulled one of our teachers to be the second choices teacher. So over the course of the year, again, this is like a testament to the good work we're doing at the high school. Many of those students in that classroom ended up actually being in general ed classes, and this just kind of gradually happened this year. So the numbers in that classroom have, shifted. Along with that, the person doing the academic support, we were finding that it does require more of a person in a teaching role, because the person has to make a lot of contacts with teachers in terms of accommodations and modifications. So what we're looking at for next year is having that teacher that we shifted to choices become the academic support teacher, which she did before, which would eliminate the need. Well, what we would do is, we wouldn't need that ed tech. So we're looking to eliminate one position at the high school.
And just to clarify, similar to when we've discussed with other positions, those are generally done through just attrition, right? Or
for ed techs, yeah.
For ed techs, right? Because they're moving in and out every year. Okay.
Yeah, they are. We have openings every year.
So will there still be one Choices classroom available, or will it be just coordinated by the academic support person?
No, it looks like we're going to have one Choices classroom next year. Because we have several students graduating, and actually some of the students that started out in the Choices classroom at the beginning of this year have since been really integrated in general ed, and they're doing very well. So it doesn't look like we're going to need two classrooms next year.
Thank
Yep.
Other questions on that position for Bonnie? Was that it?
That's it.
Okay. Any other general questions for Bonnie? Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Gotta stop hiding my agenda on myself here. All right. So next up is Moore Street School, Julie Nickerson.
Okay, so you have my budget worksheet, and you'll see that due to all of the requests we've done previously over the last few years, we've been generously supported by yourselves in the community, and we've increased our staffing over the years and have a full team of support staff for our students. We really don't have any requests other than a .1 librarian, which came about as a result of the district realignment of library support that I think you heard about when Will presented his budget. So what this means for us is the librarian that is currently shared between Pownell and Moore Street. She's currently .9. The .1 will make her full-time, and .5 at Moore Street, .5 at Pownell. Any questions for me?
That was the quickest presentation ever.
Yeah.
Valerie.
Sorry, I'm going to go back to the enrollment.
Yeah.
So I do have questions because I'm looking at your kindergarten and first grade, and you have 5 groups there, and you have 4 groups in second grade. When that second grade moves up, then I assume that you'll have to retain those 5 teachers unless you see a decrease in enrollment. So I'm just wondering if you have had the time to strategize a little bit about next year and space and all of that.
So really, well, I guess that's kind of part of our conversation we were having today. Clearly, we have an increased enrollment. So that next group moving up will mean that they would be in the same 2021. So they're going from, so that next year when they move up, potentially they'll be in the same scenario we're in this year, where we're moving 5 classes into 4. They're going from 17s into 20s. Currently we have 19s and 20s in our second grade that are moving on. And as second graders, that feels like a comfortable number that they, that based on how limited our space is, that feels like manageable numbers that the children do fine with.
Yeah, although when I look at the total numbers, I mean, you will end up with classes of 21 and 22 if you decide to move those 5 groups into 4.
Right.
And my personal feeling about the class size is that the reason why the 2021 is not being questioned, at least by me this year, is because we know about the space constraints, and we know that this may result in a portable classroom. But going forward, I do not want to start a trend that we're comfortable with 21, 22, or 2021 in second grade. So this year it seems to be, at least in my mind, a little bit of an aberration because we haven't had the time or opportunity to get caught up with enrollment. But now we know that the enrollment is growing. So I'm hoping that next year we won't be saying, well, 21, 22 is okay, and continue that trend in years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but also, we do on year, just like we don't know how many we'll get. Like Marsanen got those 40 that summer, which was not typical. We also lose and gain throughout the year. Like last year, we we have already lost 4 of our current year's kindergarten since the start of the year. So, you know, that may happen with that grade level too. So it's, yes, we need to be thinking about what if, but at the same time, we don't know how that might, like this time next year, that number might be way down. So it's hard to tell. It could be up too.
Yeah, and all I'm asking is just for some deep forward thinking, and I know that you guys are doing it, but
Yeah.
I can't really not bring it up
Yeah.
because it's very important.
Yeah, no,
Thank
I get
you.
it.
I should have this like tattooed on my brain, but what is the threshold for this age range in our policy that we worked so hard on?
The target is 18 to 1.
Ideally is 18, max without action is 20, 21. You have to do something, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking it up. I have it somewhere. I'll confirm that.
She
here
should
in a minute.
also have it tattooed. Like
No,
right
I know. Okay.
It is 18 to 1. And the threshold action level is 20 to 1.
Which
So
means
we're
yeah.
inching up and passing right by the target. So the target is really what we want to be mindful of.
I mean, I think that's true in a perfect world, but to the point of we then have to weigh, okay, is it better to have 20 kids in a classroom or is it better to have smaller class sizes in a portable, right? And I think those are the discussions that are happening.
Right. And that's why I'm thinking,
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying I'm not going to question this
Yeah,
year. I just don't want to be having the same conversation next year or the year to come.
So I mean, part of why Becky and I are head scratching around it too is that it's not just a classroom and a space. It's also, we'll be asking for additional specialist time. We'll be asking for more in the curriculum line because once you build once you have a classroom, you now need
Stuff in it.
nearly $10,000 classroom library, and you know there's just more knock-ons or ripple effects around all the moving parts. So you know,
It's a
that's-
tipping point.
Yeah.
Any other? Yep, Maddie.
When we have the facilities workshop in April, we should have that printed copy of the policy at the ready, and it would be great to have your strategic planning thinking around that, you know, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, somewhere in the middle, how we plan for what we think is going to happen.
Okay. Anything else for Julie? Thank you. Okay. School nutrition, Erin Dow.
Hello. I was in a band once. Becky's band. So after a few years of coming here with some complicated situations the program had been dealing with, and complicated asks, I guess, I'm not here with that this year. Pretty much everything that we added into the budget as far as durable goods and equipment and stuff that we anticipate needing to purchase was just adjusted for enrollment plus consumer price index estimates on that kind of stuff and what we can expect it to cost more next year. I put in a little extra money to help with some travel and conference expenses because after seeing my staff come back from the national conference last year, like I want more of them to have that chance, and we weren't really budgeted for that when we did it, but we made it happen for them. And then the only other thing that we added that directly affects the local appropriation is an additional $10,000 to offset the effect that forgiving some of the negative meal balances that we had as a result of the policy that the district has kind of had on the program. So last year we were able to kind of absorb that cost by basically taking one of the monthly local appropriation checks that we get as part of the general support of the program just kind of specifically appropriating that towards this debt repayment. But the net effect of that is the revenue didn't come in, or you could look at it as that we removed that amount of operating cost from what we had to work with. And so this year, we actually did a little bit of promotion around this. We're basically saying, come, apply for free and reduced meals, even if you don't, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, qualify, thank you. We can still help you with your meal debt because, as everybody knows, this is a big problem for our district and for all districts nationwide. The nice thing is that I've seen about half the amount of meal debt written off this year. So we're at about $10,000 or $11,000, whereas last year we were at $25,000. So obviously some of that has to do with the fact that we wrote off that $25,000 the year before, but also because my program engaged in a very aggressive outreach program starting midsummer to try to qualify additional families. And so the bottom line is there's 10 grand kind of hanging out there that we're looking to get some help with so that it doesn't affect our general operations. And so other than that, that's the short, long story.
Did you see the percentage of free and reduced families grow with that effort?
Yeah, that's been tricky too because of some of the changes that the Trump administration made to SNAP qualifications. We lost, I have the actual number, but I think it was 50 something kids that ordinarily would have qualified without an application because they or a member of their household were eligible for SNAP or TANF benefits. The families lost that benefit. That doesn't necessarily mean that the family didn't qualify, but perhaps they had had food stamps for 8 years and never had to fill out an application, and so we've had to go chase these people. So we did lose a bunch of free qualified kids, but because of the aggressive marketing we did of the free and reduced program, we picked up an equivalent amount of free kids on application, which is great. That means we probably recovered most of those previously food stamp eligible kids. And then we picked up an extra 55 reduced price students, which is really a sign, as we've discussed, those of you who have been in meetings with me before have discussed that's really a sign to me that there is pockets of poverty or financial insecurity in this area that finally I feel like we might be breaking through, and so that the free and reduced program isn't looking so much like a welfare program, and it's starting to appear to be something that the district is trying to do to help our students. And so, yes, we did see a bump, especially in the reduced price. The free eligible, not so much, again, because we lost so many of the SNAP eligible kids, but picked up maybe 5 kids on top of that. So we recovered an extra 5 kids on top of what we lost.
Great. Any other questions for Erin? Jen?
I'm just wondering with your marketing, so is it very, very clear to families through the marketing that this isn't something that the kids, know and they have a special ticket or, it's just because I'm sure that that's a huge piece of the barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. That every piece of information that we send home that has information about the free and reduced meals program, we have a very specific federal and state confidentiality clause that's included on every piece that we send home. So yes, absolutely.
Have the changes in what is required for healthy meals and portions, the changes at the federal level, caused you to change the way you operate the program in any way?
No.
No. Okay.
The only change, the only major change is the relaxation of the whole grains rule, but the state decided that they were going to keep going with whole grains. So schools can still apply for waivers to allow them to serve white flour products if they can really show that there's an effect on meal sales. But I'm of the opinion that if we keep seeing an increase in sales and everything's whole grain, why would we ever go back to that? There are some relaxations of the rules that are in talks right now. Most of them have to do with minimum requirements for the types and amounts of fruits and vegetables. And so I can confidently tell you that if they tell us that we can serve tater tots every morning for breakfast, we're not going to, because we're serving good food. You know, another option that they're looking at is allowing a la carte meal sales for grade schoolers, which we won't do. So while I have kind of gotten my feet wet in the whole director world as these changes we were in the thick of getting used to these changes and kids railing against it, I can definitely see, and I think my staff would agree, that we're not getting the side eye anymore of the slightly brown spaghetti, you know. So if we can just keep that going in that direction, that's what we want to do for sure.
Okay. Suzanne.
So you spoke to this a little bit, and thank you very much about talking about the concerns over SNAP changes. But one concern that I've heard a little bit about, and you touched on this in terms of the outreach, people not filing for free or reduced lunch because of concerns over losing other benefits. And just wondering whether that's come up and how...
Losing other benefits?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a scenario where that could happen, so I haven't heard anything like that. Unless I'm misunderstanding your question.
No, I think that's right. That was another district that was talking about people basically not wanting the government to know that they're getting free or reduced lunch, and having a run-on effect. And I didn't know if that had
Yeah, no, I can't. I mean, I'm not a total expert, but I've been dealing with this for a while,
Right.
and I think even in terms of people qualifying for main care and things like that, the income requirements to qualify for free or reduced lunch are some of the most stringent.
Yeah.
I think, and you don't have to, with this, you don't have to claim your assets. And so there have definitely been some stories out there lately about people who were millionaires but had a small income and were collecting SNAP benefits and, you know, that kind of stuff. But I haven't heard anything about free meals.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, one of the ways that I have promoted the free and reduced meals is to let parents know about the additional benefits they can receive because their children are qualified for free and reduced meals, like free Common App for college, free SATs, PSATs for schools that don't pay the fees, you know, low-cost cell phones and cheap internet.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for putting the budget here. This is the first time we see it, and it's very interesting.
It was a labor of love.
Yes, I'm sure it was. And
thank
I'm
you,
trying
Anne,
to
for
love
helping.
this thing because I don't have my glasses on and I can't really see the numbers very well.
Yeah.
But I do see that it seems like it's hard to budget for food purchases.
Well, yes. But every time the food budget, went over budget, it's because the participation went up. So I didn't do the 16-17 budget. I inherited it. And as you can see, I went way above it, but in the same year we went way above in revenues. And so if you look at the same lines in last year's budget, we did the same thing. We exceeded our expenses on food purchases, but we also exceeded our projections in sales, but showed a small shortfall, and that's where the debt reduction or debt forgiveness stuff comes into play.
Any other questions or comments for Erin? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, technology. Jim Grant.
Thank you. My budget may look a little complex, but it's because of good changes that have happened at DOE. So if I may, I'd like to start with a little bit of history so that you can better understand why these changes are here. So 4 years ago, we signed on to MLTI and we took alternative number 2, which were the MacBook Airs. That was a 4-year lease, and each device was $248. The state picks up the tab for 7th and 8th, so there is no charge there. But for our 6th grade and our 9 through 12, $248 per unit. So fast forward 3 years, we have an elementary lease that was solely purchased by us to give all of the elementary staff MacBook Airs of the same model. So as we enter this year, we would typically be seeing a request for the next purchase of MLTI because it's a 4-year lease. This is year 4. But the DOE was not prepared to do that because of the change in administration. There was no plan. And so myself and 2 other tech directors talked to the commissioner about a bridge year in which it would be like a pause button. We couldn't possibly make a budget on something that we didn't know what we were making a budget for. So the state has come up with a plan to give us the 7th and 8th grade devices, to allow us to purchase the other devices at $48 kind of a piece. And why I say kind of is because they're also not covering the licensing, so it's more than $48 a piece. And to carry forward in a 5th year with the same devices, same program, just extended a year until we can determine what the next phase of MLTI will be. So there's a cost savings there. Let's go back to the elementary school. Those devices are now 3 going on to 4 years and should have been scheduled for replacement next year. But now they're no longer staggered. They would happen at the same time. So my budget takes some of the savings and purchases new elementary devices this year while we have those available so that the elementary staff can have new devices a year ahead of time. And I'm proposing that we use these 4-year-old devices to supplement our educational program, because right now ed techs, subs, other people that come into the building don't have a device to use. And it's one of the things that we deal with a lot is I want to do this with a class, but the teacher's home sick. They took their laptop and I don't have anything to use. So this would give us that ability to give that tool to the person. And the rest of the devices, we would supplement the MLTI program because in this pause, there's no new devices coming down. If something breaks, it's up to us to fix. Part of the buyout is also to look at schools that no longer want devices. So Dr. Foley signed the form the other day that it would allow us to go into a lottery to supplement because, as you know, we are seeing enrollments at the high school go up. So we're probably going to need more of the 11-inch devices, so hopefully we can purchase more there. But if not, we'll have a few devices left over from the elementary buy to supplement that. So that's the majority of my budget. It was dispersed between the high school expenditure and then district-wide. If you take the savings from the high school, add it into the district, and then look at it as one pool of money, comes out about equal. That plus continuation of network enhancements, security updates to our firewall, finishing projector installs in the science wing here at the high school as well as the middle school and then other areas is the total of the request of my budget. Looks a little different on the forms, you know, as we do this because the other thing that has happened is the DOE is now allowing us to consolidate where expenditures are. So we have taken things that were traditionally out in the schools, like software expenditures or certain hardware, and put it all in the district account. So if you look at the district account, it looks like it's larger, but those schools show smaller. So that, in a nutshell, is my budget.
I feel like you should have Will do a flow chart like you did for our
It
teachers.
needs a flow chart, yeah.
Computers are going where now?
But I think you know, it's something that we've needed a long time. Is those people that don't have access to devices.
Oh no, I agree. I hadn't even really thought of the concept of a sub and there's no computer in the classroom because the teacher brought it home. What do they do? Questions for Jim? Sally?
So you're saying that MLTI doesn't provide any support to repair the devices this coming year? So we're doing that in-house, and the parents still sign the insurance form at the same rate?
So there's been no concrete decision on that. Negotiations are still happening to see if there will be some type of repair offered. But assuming that that is not the case, our newest tech is Apple certified, meaning that now just because we have one on staff, all of us can work on Apple devices because we know how to do them, we just don't hold that certification. And so we can repair in-house. The cost would be in parts. And so there would still be a cost even though the labor would be in-house.
And the cost to families would remain at 45? Is that what we charge?
No, it's lower than that currently. I believe it's 25.
25? Okay. So that would remain flat.
We would have to look at whether we're doing it in-house or if we're contracting. There are a couple companies that are interested, which way we go and what that would be.
Okay.
Yep.
Assuming some sort of equipment refresh happens, next year, philosophically, are you still, would you be leaning towards Apple products as the likely way to go, or curious where that goes?
I want you to tip your hand, Jim.
Yeah.
Because the 7th graders are talking. And,
The 7th graders are talking. Let me give you my political answer on that. I'm fortunate enough to be selected to serve on the MLTI committee. RSU 5 also has Lisa Hogan on that committee, so RSU 5 is well represented. We want an equitable solution, but we understand that equity also has to mean that it is one of the better products on the market. Does that answer your question?
That does not.
Good, because I was trying to
Very
not.
political answer. It answers nothing.
Why don't you see me in the hallway?
Yeah.
we'll
Follow him with the camera.
nerd out there. So,
Yeah. Other, Dolly.
So there won't be another bridge year, right? So this
No.
is a one-time event.
It's a one-time event.
And next year, then there will be new devices.
Yes, so for about 20 years, there's been another option of some kind. This is an aberration, and we're making plans for the next 20 to 25 years.
And then another question I had was related to the second bullet point, continued implementation of voice amplification and projection systems. I recall you had a $12,000 request last year for the high school and Freeport Middle. Is this the same request that you
It is
had
not.
last year?
No. So some devices were put in. This is more. We're
And-
doing a few at a time.
Okay. And this is addressing the need in all 6 schools?
Yes. So mainly it's the gym cafeterias of the elementary schools. And again, there's going to be outliers, but it's mainly the science wing of the high school, and it's some classrooms at the middle school, mainly in projectors.
Okay. Any other questions for Jim? Hopefully ones he'll answer. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right. Community programs. Peter Wagner. Oh, I just jumped right over you, Dennis. I'm sorry. I crossed you off. You're done.
So excited he was ready.
As he runs out the
Yeah,
door.
that was the shortest one yet, wasn't it?
We wanted you to beat Julie's with how quick it was.
Hi, I'm Dennis Willett. I'm the Transportation and Facilities Director for You at Home. So we service over 2,000 kids in this district with our buses and our beautiful facilities and athletic facilities. And of those 2,000 kids, we travel 1,400 to 1,500 of those students to and from school a day safely. This year, we have added 3 buses to the budget to increase the size of the fleet. We currently have 21 buses. We want to increase the size of the fleet to 24 buses, and in order to have buses available anytime they're needed, including field trips, out-of-district sports activities, and other busing needs. Also in this budget, we have added funding for composting at all the schools. That was a pretty important thing that we were looking at last year. A reserve account, we talked about that in Becky's presentation. A reserve account is being created and built for the tennis courts. We, in my budget, I have money to repair the tennis courts this summer to keep them playable till we can get them rebuilt. A late bus is being added to the middle school for the panel students to ensure equitable access to after-school activities and student support. These priorities align with the district objective strategic goals of 4.1 to ensure all staff and students have quality facilities to meet their needs. And the purchase of the 3 buses is tied with the goal 4.4 to provide student transportation that supports the participation in curricular and co-curricular programs. So last year we added a half-time van driver. We have that half-time van driver. He's on staff. This year we have no new staff requirements, although I am looking for a bus driver if anybody at home is wondering. And we can always use some part-time drivers for sports trips. We struggle with that, although we are training. We have one in training right now, and he's doing very well. We'll see where we get from there.
Is it Ann?
No. No, but we talked about Ann, didn't we, Ann? I've already asked Ann. For the first day she was here, I think I asked her.
Ann has a full-time job.
Yeah, she's got plenty to do, that's for sure. So, and other things that we're doing, we're going to add a generator to the high school and the generator to the central office. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can, when we have a power outage, particularly at the high school or the central, particularly at the high school or any school, when the phones go out and the internet goes out, it's kind of a nightmare. I mean, if we have one phone if we lose power at the central office, we have one phone, and it rings for Ginny, and that's tough. That's a tough deal. It's worth the generator. And in the high school, of course, we keep the internet going. We keep the parents can call and find out what's going on. It's really an important thing. I think it's going to really be effective for us. And then another thing is the Moore Street School Nurse's Office. We did the nurse's office at the middle school. We did the nurse's office at the Pownell School. And we're going to do something with the nurse's office at Moore Street School. It's tight. She has no place to meet with students quietly without interruptions. I think we can reconfigure her space fairly quickly. So that's my presentation for that. I've included, I know I was asked a couple of questions about how we replace buses, how we're going to replace the three buses this year, add additional buses. We're not replacing any this year. Our oldest bus in our fleet is 2007. We're actually replacing a 2009 bus with the propane bus that we wrote a grant for and we received it. So we're going to be getting that probably around May. Currently, like I said, we have 21 buses. Our goal is 24 buses. We have 18 bus runs with 21 buses. With 18 bus runs, that leaves us 3 buses to do sports trips, and we don't have a spare a lot of days. In a district this size, spread out as far as we are, we need to have at least 2 spares on site. I mean, that makes good sense because, we actually borrowed a bus last year from another district. If you follow along this spreadsheet, you'll see we put the replacement year in the column to the left, and then the lease payments on the buses that we have or will have current lease payments on. And then down here in the right-hand corner, you'll see that we're paying our final payment on the 8 buses that we bought for Durham when we took over the Durham transportation. We're going to be adding the 3, and you'll see in 2021 the next year, and we'll still be paying on the first and second payments from 2020. So if you follow that down, you'll see that, and if you look at the replace column, you'll see that those years are pretty well spelled out. And we spaced, the last thing we really wanted to do, and I'm probably getting in the weeds here, right? But the last thing we really wanted to do was replace 8 buses again in 1 year. So we kind of spaced them out, and we tried to think that through. So that's the answer to that. If you have any questions on that sheet, I'd be happy to answer them. And then, no, wait.
Not about the sheet, but about the bus drivers. Could you remind me? I know last year we talked about how kids were missing class and having to leave early because we didn't have. I'm actually
going to talk about that next, because that was another question. I started tracking that. We had the question asked to us recently, and we started tracking that over the month of February. And you know, we've had a few incidences, not many, but we've had a few. If you look at the sheet, on February 10th, the girls' basketball from the Freeport Middle School was going to Waynfleet. They were scheduled to be picked up at 3:30. We didn't have a spare bus driver available, so we pushed it to 4, so that one of the regular route drivers, when they were getting done their route, they could get on that trip and take them. It was a better course of action than not saying you can't go. On February 10th, again, two trips. Girls basketball was supposed to have, from the high school, was supposed to have a game in Gardner. We didn't have a sub driver to do that, but actually this worked out in our favor, because Craig wanted to move them to SMCC the next day. It worked out better. He was grateful for it, but unfortunately, you know, it doesn't make us look great. But and then on February 11th, Nordic Ski going to Pineland, Freeport Middle School and Freeport High School. We had to get the kids out 10 minutes early from school, because the trip was supposed to leave at 2:40, but again, no sub driver available. So we were able to use a driver out of the district that doesn't have a high school run, and he went over and took them to Pineland, dropped them off, and then he went on his elementary run. And we get pretty clever with this stuff sometimes. And the trip went 10 minutes early. Unfortunately, we got them out 10 minutes early, but it was better than missing a meet or a ski thing.
So, I mean, I understand the rationale behind, particularly at this point in time, given the buses rolling off from the purchase for the Durham buses, adding to the fleet in this year, because the impact is, you don't feel it as much with those other ones rolling off. But my concern is like all of these reasons are drivers, not buses.
Well, not all of them. We have
It just
18,
happened to be in this month. It was all drivers.
Yeah, but we have 18 bus runs, 21 buses. We don't have enough buses really, you know, to cover us if something happened. You know, we have 3 trips a day usually, and we find a way to do that. I drive buses sometimes. My assistant drives buses, and my mechanic drives buses, and the sports guy drives buses when we can. You're right, though. It's a driver problem, and I need sub-drivers.
But how long did we have the bus from Topsom, from 75 this fall?
We had it at 3 months.
And was that because one of the other buses was out of commission?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
It was in
so
the
it's
shop.
it's not that we need extra buses for runs. It's we just need backups if something happens.
Right. That's yes. I mean, if we're using every bus in the yard for sports trips and runs, and we have nothing, and something breaks down, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. But we would. But it's not pretty for the parents to, you know, or anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mara?
It sounds like this takes up a lot of your time.
There's a lot of things that take up a lot of my time.
I'm just-
It's my job, so it's fine.
I'm just wondering at what point there's just sort of like a point where it's taking up so much of your time and energy to try to make sure the buses are covered, that if the cost benefit of saying, okay, we have a part-time, I feel like we talked about this before, we have a part-time backup sub or something like that. Like, is there a point, like a tipping point where it's so time consuming to try to make sure that you
In
can
all,
move everybody.
in all fairness, I have an assistant that does most of the transportation work now, so between the two of us, we work on it together. And I mean, yeah, would I say no? We don't need that. You can't really say that. Anything would help, but it's hard to put somebody to work when you don't really have a position for them. It's more of a sub thing. Can't just hire somebody to. Well, we could. There's ways around that, but it's just budget. I don't really have a position for a sub. I don't have anything for them to do necessarily. I guess we could put them in the school cleaning, but when they weren't driving. But
And you have done that, right? I mean, that was sort of the whole birth of that custodian/bus driver position, right?
That's our model. That's the model that we use. Yeah, to keep people interested, because a 40-hour job is more appealing than a sub job. So it's a tough situation to be in, and people, I would really like to reach out to the retired community to drive a bus when, retired personnel. We'll help them get their license. We'll help you get your license. We're pretty good at that. We have 2 trainers on our staff, and they're excellent. And we're training a person right now, and he's a good driver. It's just we got to get him to get a license, and hopefully we'll bring him on board, and we'll have a whole different conversation next year. So we work at it every day. I mean, you can't imagine the people I ask. Ann, for one thing.
So to that point, I actually should have brought this up before, but I'm sitting on a committee that is the Freeport Cultural Plan Committee, so kind of wearing 2 hats there. I'm part of ACAF, but I'm also part of you guys. And so yesterday we were talking about transportation because Freeport would love to have a trolley, for example. And then it came up because Freeport Community Services has a van, but no driver. And so it seems like there's a possible opportunity for collaboration between the schools, community programs, potentially Freeport elders. The gal who's the executive director at Freeport Community Services seemed to think that could be a great opportunity.
I've actually talked to them.
Okay.
But I don't really have anybody available to, that it's, it's just nobody is. I mean, I'm very cautious about who I hire too. I can hire a driver tomorrow, but I don't think we want that driver here tomorrow. I'd rather drive myself, to be honest with you.
We appreciate your cautious nature.
And I think I've said that many times.
I mean, it's important to obviously find the right people, but
Right.
If they have access to a broader market to market the role, and you have the capacity to train, and maybe there's a win-win
great.
scenario in there somewhere.
Yep. Like I said, I tell 100 people, a day. I swear. It's like, oh no, here comes a guy.
Valley.
So Dennis, I do want to commend you on all the gymnastics that you do, because I hear stories from our kids who come and say, well, they took us in our bus to Gray, New Gloucester, and then we jumped on their bus with all our equipment, and then we went to Rumford on some other district's bus.
Yeah. It's amazing, and we do have a good collaboration with Greeley and the surrounding towns, and
right.
A lot of times they brought their basketball team here. We took their team somewhere. Oh, we brought them home. They took our team somewhere. It was great. It was just we just work at it, Yeah.
So I
we
really
do our best not to let the kids miss out on anything. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to get them out of school 10 minutes or half an hour early, and we don't like to do that. And but we do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing your best, and I also have to commend you on the picks that the people that you hire.
Yeah,
you have some really good drivers.
Oh, I have some great drivers.
So you do a good job.
That was the best crew I've ever had right now.
Yeah. And they like what they do too, which is really nice. Going back to your requests here, I'm really happy to see all these things there. So thank you. I was looking at my list from last year and saying, okay, I'm going to ask about this. And it's there. And for every single thing, it's here. So thank you. One thing that I wanted to ask you, and this is very last minute because we just had this meeting yesterday with sustainability, or the day before. But we did talk about possibly doing an audit. Is this
Yes.
something you're envisioning that you may have information to include in this year's budget?
We hadn't really talked about that. I think we're going to explore some opportunities that might have no cost to them first before we do anything, and see where we are with that. And then I think moving forward, we'll, you know, if we find that that's not going to fit our needs, then we'll have to discuss that further. I mean, I'm sure Becky and I will talk about that. We meet actually quite often, so yeah, it's all good.
It is.
Any other questions or comments for Dennis? Sorry, I jumped right over here.
No, it's okay.
I got
Thank
ahead
you.
of myself. I was
Thanks a lot.
so excited. Okay, now it's Peter's turn. Community programs.
Good evening. Dennis and Aaron earlier today had assured me that by the time I followed them in the budget presentations tonight, that you all would be so angry that you wouldn't even hear anything I had to say.
We had to pick on the new guy.
Everyone seems downright pleased right now. So, as my summary for this year indicates, or I hope that it indicates that it's not right there in black and white, but I'm really pleased with where the community programs office is right now and what we're offering. The people that we are attracting to the team, both at the central office and in our Laugh and Learn program and our summer programs, Camp Seaside, and the growth that we're seeing in a lot of different ways. So I feel like we're in a really good spot right now. I probably have the least complicated request of any of my colleagues in that the local share that we ask is focused specifically on adult education. We are an extra small program as defined by the state of Maine Department of Education, Adult Education. This past year we served 21 adult learners. We had 4 individuals who completed their high-set equivalency degree, which was wonderful. We will soon be bringing a new adult ed coordinator on board. This person will be starting hopefully in April, no later than May 1st. It's a person who I think will bring the program in some really great new directions. Anyway, that part of the program is doing very, very well, and that's where the local share goes. We're also growing the recreation program in some ways that I'm really excited about, and at this moment we intend to open an afternoon care at Pownell School in the fall. Those registration forms are actually out there, so that would mean that we're essentially Laugh and Learn will be serving all three communities, which is exciting as well. So we have some nice things happening right now and some nice growth. One of the priorities alignments that I'll draw your attention to, number 3, under school parent community partnerships, and mentioned the Community Programs Advisory Committee. After many months of talking and working to get this going, Jeremy and I are going to be launching this Community Programs Advisory Committee. We had a date scheduled for our first meeting that fell on one of the nights of the recent storms that we had, so it is rescheduled for tomorrow. So I had hoped that I'd be able to report on that. Is there another storm coming in? Okay, all right, good. My goodness. Maybe next year, Jeremy. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about the program, but I feel that that where we are right now is a really good spot, and our adult ed program is solid, where the local share is going, and that our other growing programs are being funded pretty much by revenues from the programs. So it's so we do well there. We're able to offset our costs with those revenues, and it allows us to adjust to unforeseen circumstances. For instance, last year I reported on the move of Laugh and Learn of the preschool from Moore Street School over to Mass Landing, and so we were able to buy new playground equipment that is sized for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and have that installed over there. And thankfully we were able to do that. But that's been a really smooth transition. It's turned out to be a real positive, where we're concerned about how that was going to work out.
Maddie.
I want to put on another hat, the arts and cultural hat, and publicly thank Peter and make you all aware of how helpful community programs has been for us for our school and youth programs. We've done 4 free programs for local kids, and we've done 3 of them. There's 1 still to come. And 3 of those are taking place in facilities, and if you look, they're helping us with our marketing, and they're helping us with facilities, and it's just really been wonderful to partner.
Great.
Good. Thanks, Maddie. And what I'll say to that, and again to the multitudes of people who probably are watching tonight, I sincerely believe that I want community programs, homegrown programs, to be as varied and inclusive and wide-reaching as possible. But I also want to be as receptive as I can be to other community partners, especially nonprofit partners, who, I'm jealous of the programming, frankly, that ACAF has, and I would love it if that were community programs. But if we are supporting, if we are helping make possible through the resources that we have of marketing and facilities and such, if we're able to make those experiences possible for kids and adults to come in contact with something that they wouldn't have otherwise, and they have a good experience and they learn something and they're fulfilled by it, we're fulfilling our mission by supporting in that way. So so if there are any other community partners out there that you all know of, I'd love to make contact with them.
I had a question on the adult ed coordinator. So is that's a new position? Did we not have one before, or is this a second one?
Yeah, so our previous adult ed coordinator resigned in January.
Right.
So that position's been open, and so that's being filled with the new person that's just accepted our offer. The previous adult ed coordinator, back some point before my arrival as director of the office, that was a 40-hour-a-week position. The most recent coordinator had it down to 30 hours and was also doing some learning lab work to offset that. And so this new person coming back in will go back to 40 hours.
So it's really an incremental 10 hours.
Correct.
Okay,
yes,
so it's not a whole
sorry.
new position. It's just an increase from 3/4 time to full
Correct.
time.
That's
okay.
right. Yes.
Perfect. Mara.
Could you talk about the future of the teen center?
Sure. Yes. So the teen center in the past was a drop-in sort of arrangement, and when it was a drop-in arrangement, there were, I think, lots and lots of kids who came from the middle school down to Depot Street, and they were involved in our teen programs there in some way, shape, or form. But because it was drop-in, there weren't really any firm expectations about, okay, these are the middle schoolers that we will have today, and we're checking off names as they come through the door. So I think what was found is that a lot of kids would perhaps tell their parents that, well, I'll be at the port after school today, pick me up at 5:30. They may go out and run around downtown, and the parents would show up at 5:30. The kids got back at 5:20 just in time to be picked up. And so that's my understanding of that. I haven't seen that with my own eyes, but the long and the short of it is that a couple of years ago, the port moved from just a drop-in with very few expectations to a more structured sort of process where we know who's on the list, and we know who we're expecting to see on Wednesday and Thursday, and we are accountable for them from 2:30 to 5:30, for instance. And so what the effect of that is, it's taken a very large list of kids that we might see any given day or any given week, and it's really shortened the list, but we can count on them, right? So it's a much more reliable group. We're looking to grow that We don't have the staff for it right now, but we could grow to accommodate it. What we are, I'll use the word competing, although it's not an adversarial sort of situation. What we're competing with is the proximity of the Freeport Public Library to the middle school. So the public library here in Freeport does something that I certainly wish the library in Bath had done when I was a kid, which is they've really opened their arms to these middle schoolers, and they've created a space and programming that is very welcoming to them. And all they have to do is leave the school building and walk on that lovely trail through the woods, and they're there. So they, on some days, they have 30, 40 kids that are there, depending on the season, depending on the weather. They can have more than that. And so we need to find a way either to incentivize kids making that walk down to Depot Street, or there's a bus that at least used to be available, maybe still is. Yeah, still is. Or find a way to partner more effectively with the middle school and with the public library to offer our resources to enhance what they're already doing. So again, the same principle as what I was just mentioning to Maddie about, if we are helping someone else achieve their goals, we're still fulfilling our mission. We can still serve those kids if we were able to offer some financial support, some staffing, some creative input into programming. So whether it happens in the Port Teen Center at Depot Street, that's where I would like it to be. But ultimately, where I'd like to get is that we just have a greater role, or we have a role in serving a greater number of middle schoolers in that programming.
Just specific to that, I know that the library is looking at a renovation, and I don't know that that's been approved for the short term. It might be a year or so out. Valley may have more information on that. And that's the purpose of that, is to grow that space to serve that population.
Yeah, so we would love to be a voice around that table to help maybe inform what it looks like and how it's used. Yeah.
Yeah, they've had a strategic plan. They even have architectural drawings, and it's a large expansion of space that will be dedicated to teens.
Yep, excellent.
Yeah, so you probably would want to reach out to them and
Yeah,
partner with them, and they would welcome the help
Sure.
and the programming and anything you can offer.
Yep. Arlene and I speak pretty regularly, and I've made it clear that I'd like to be a part of whatever happens next in any way that we can. And yeah, she's been pretty receptive to that, so I'm optimistic.
Just another thought is, I know from my 9th grader, 6th and 7th graders love the library, but they kind of feel like they phase out. So you guys could target the 8th grade, because they kind of feel like it's now taken over by the 6th and 7th. They've kind of been there, done that.
Interesting.
So that would be another way to think about.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
More independence.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And arrive at 5:20.
Right. Well, so one of the ways that we're looking to expose more kids to the Port Teen Center has again been put off by the weather a little bit, but Fab Friday, which is a 3 times a year program at the middle school, a day at the Port Center or a day with the Port Center is one of the offerings for this Fab Friday that's now, I think, been postponed twice and is now happening this week. And so we are going to we're going to have that group of kids. We're going to bus them down to Desert of Maine, where they have a sheet of ice out there that they maintain, and we're going to do curling, milk jug curling with them. And then there's going to be a little bit of snowshoeing out there as well, and then we'll bus them back to the port, where they'll have hot chocolate and play games and shoot pool and ping pong and whatever else. So we had been really hopeful that we might get 15 or so folks signing up for that. I think that our final number is 5 where we're at, but 4 of those 5 aren't regular Port customers. So we've got 4 kids who haven't been a part of it in the last couple of years. So that's good. We'll take that as a win. But yeah, I mean, there definitely will be some messaging on Friday about, hey, look, if you had fun today, come here during the week. Tell your friends. Yeah, tell your friends, exactly.
It's about the port, the physical space there seems like it could use. I had an opportunity to spend some time there last fall, and it seems like it could use a little TLC, and I don't know what the situation is there, because I know the physical space is owned by FCS, but it seems like, I mean, I know maybe kids don't notice that kind of thing, and adults maybe do a little bit more, but it just seemed like it could use a little TLC that I don't know that we're necessarily responsible for, because we don't own the space, and I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. We've tried to make it, well, let me say, from a year or year and a half ago, I think it's better now than it was, and it's a little more welcoming and teen friendly, but it could still be better. I'm not sure, I don't know what latitude we have to do like real physical changes in there. I mean, we can bring additional things into the space that would maybe go down that path that you were talking about. But yeah, I'd love to chat with you or others about it if you have some ideas.
Yeah, maybe some interested and supportive community members
Yeah.
might be able to.
Yeah, awesome.
So I want to commend you on the teen treks. That has attracted a lot of kids who don't regularly use the port, so that's a great way to introduce them to your programs. And going back to your request here, there's a line that says additional transition and change as we relocate our preschool. What does that mean? From where to where?
Are you looking at 20 or 21?
It's in the top paragraph under what key issues
Oh,
and
there
priorities.
we go. Sorry. Yes. So there is going to be another move this year of the preschool, but the good news is it's all in the same building. So it's this will not be a move that incurs the same type of expense that last summer's move did, but just additional transition for our staff and moving the things. Long and the short of it is that Emily Grimm and her team, they were able to carve out a space for us in a classroom that had previously been the computer lab at Mass Landing. That's where our preschool now resides. And our before and after care operation for 3rd through 5th graders, they had a double classroom space down there in the life skills area that had been more or less, I think it had been, it had been sort of the exclusive domain of Laugh and Learn for 20 years or something like that. And but we had to share it this year, so we couldn't. So we lost some of our storage. Emily's looking at the bigger picture and thinks that if we take the preschool and move it down to that life skills space, and we can do our before and after care operation there, that we can have those 2 classrooms again. So it's a move within. It's a move within the building back to a space that is very familiar to us. So it's just some more transition, but not of the expensive variety. Thankfully.
And just looking into the future, same as with the schools, do you feel confident that you can stay there? Or are you always looking around for alternative spaces?
For the preschool?
And the Laugh and Learn.
So I think that the exercise last summer, and there were there were a lot of people around the table at various times talking about, okay, if the Laugh and Learn preschool can't be at Moore Street School, where is it going to be? And we explored a lot of different options: renting space in town, building something, putting a portable or a modular unit at Moore Street School, which is now back on the table for other reasons. And so we I feel like we exhausted the long list of viable ideas that we might have had, and then and then we found, and Emily helped us find this other really great solution. And we are, to some degree, we're kind of at the mercy of what school populations are doing. I mean, the same group that at Moore Street School that was growing to the point where we had to move out of there, they presumably will all be going together to Mass Landing School as well, and so it calls into question square footage there also. So we I think we take that one year at a time and rely on the projections and what Emily and Julie and their teams are foreseeing for their buildings, and we're really thankful for their support and partnership. I mean, we couldn't have done it without their leadership as well, and so we'll see. Not a great answer, I'm sorry, but well, we're ready to move at a moment's notice.
No, I mean, it's as good an answer as you can provide.
Yeah, sure.
It just seems a little tenuous, the
Yeah.
whole situation with you and
it is.
Moore Street and Mass Landing, and basically all
Right.
of those buildings
Yeah.
seem to be ready to burst at some point
Sure.
in the near future.
What we offer, what community programs offers in regard to Laugh and Learn, both the preschool and the before and after care, they're valuable services to the community. There's no question about that in my mind, and I don't think there's probably any debate here in this room. But when push comes to shove, we're the one thing that happens in those school buildings that isn't required to happen in those school buildings. So we will continue to look for creative solutions when we run into things like this, and as the district talks about a longer term strategic plan, I hope that we're included in those conversations, and our future is included in those conversations.
So this is kind of going back to what Maura was saying earlier. I'm sure it's a topic in your house right now because we both have seniors, but senior project is something that goes on now, and it might be too late for this year, but that, like when you were talking about revamping some spaces, I think it's giving back to the community is a huge part of the senior project. So that could, and Dee Dee Bennell, of course, is amazing with connecting kids to projects. So that would be a possibility, because I know a lot of kids struggle with like coming up with something, and so sometimes a little help. And sometimes when they come up with something, it's not not the best project. So it's just an idea. I mean, to use the resources that we have, and if we have so many kids that are interested in giving back. So
that's a great idea. Yeah, and I think topics need to be finalized next week. So there is we could
2 weeks. It was in the announcements today.
Okay, yeah, we could maybe get something.
Mine got an okay on hers, so I think that's a big topic in senior homes right now.
Okay, yeah. Wait, is that an okay, like, hey, all right, you can do that? Or
yes,
like,
they got an okay,
okay,
you can do that on their project,
right,
so that's good.
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. They were angry.
All right. No new business, no personnel. Back to public comment, but I think we've driven everyone away. So I would take a motion to adjourn. Susanna and Maddie, all those in favor? Great. Everybody's home and plenty of time to watch the news.
Exactly.